He's kind of like the Joe Rogan of the hospitality industry right now.
Welcome back, Slick Talkers. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Send. To learn more about the HubSpot of hospitality, the #1 hospitality CRM that powers hospitality entrepreneurs just like you, go to sendsquared.com and let them know you heard from Will at Slick Talk. Now, let's get on to the episode. Hospitality is built on experiences, but one of the most overlooked experiences within the guest journey is, of course, payments. From clunky check-ins to failed checkout experiences, outdated payment methods and systems frustrate guests and cost businesses like yours some real money. Today, we're revealing and pulling back the curtain on why payments aren't just a necessary evil, they're actually a strategic advantage. My guest today is James Lemon, who is a payments evangelist at Stripe, one of the most influential companies in fintech. James is on a mission to educate hospitality leaders just like you on how modern payments can drive high conversions, improve operations, and even shape new business models in hospitality. In this episode, we are going to talk about the state of payments within hospitality, real world case studies, and of course, emerging tech like stablecoins and other things around alternative payment methods that you can apply to your business in hospitality, from hotels to vacation rentals and many other topics in between, from fraudulent and dispute management, plus many other things. I actually recently heard the founders of Stripe on the All In podcast, which I'm a big fan of. And I just know that there are so many other things that we didn't even get to cover on today's episode that we're going to hopefully cover in the future and deeper, so that way you can understand and how to not just make payments a unsexy topic where you have to kind of think of payments and revenue with your CFO hat on, but actually showcasing how payments is more than just payments. It's actually profitability, it's better guest experience. And of course, it leads to so many opportunities as the industry of fintech and payments continues to scale and grow and operate for companies just like us in hospitality. We are big customers and fans at Hospitality FM of Stripe and just can't believe the amount of stuff that we're still not even utilizing the platform for. So without further ado, welcome my guest, James Lemon, on the podcast today. Let's dive in. You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. All right, James Lemon, welcome to Slick Talk. How are we doing today, my friend?
Yeah, good, Will. Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here. It's winter in London, but the sun's shining, so the optimism's landed.
I feel it. I was going to say, I don't know how you can deal with the weather there, but if you get any glimpse of sunshine in London, then I think it's a great day, especially for London. It's not a popular or a common thing to happen quite often, so lucky for you. You got a beautiful day, beautiful recording, beautiful conversation ahead for all the Slick Talkers. They probably already, heard the intro for what we're going to cover today, and also obviously the information about Stripe. But let's just jump in to you before we get into the whole Stripe side of things. Where does your experience begin in hospitality and travel? And I also know you're a founder, or were a founder, had your company acquired. So kind of tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into the world of business.
Yeah, definitely. So depends how long you want, but I think my mum had a bed and breakfast on the Isle of Wight, which is a great little summer resort, big sailing festival. So my summers were basically spent making beds, cooking breakfast, sleeping in a tent in the garden so there were enough rooms to rent out. So I guess I got this hospitality bug of looking after people in my teenage years. kind of went other ways as you kind of figure out your career. But I was really lucky. I landed at IHG Hotels and Resorts, kind of late 2008, 2009, in their strategy team. So project-based role, really getting to see different parts of the business, really think about a business that's evolving. How's it going to win in the digital space? As you think about things like mobile, the rising power of OTAs, third-party distribution, rebranding, guest experience. There's a great kind of baptism of fire that kind of fed that love, I suppose, of hospitality. Another 5 years at Travelport. So looking at actually how could a kind of more traditional distributor of travel really kind of up their game in hotels, which was great. And then, my passion took me to startup land. So I was CEO of Hostmaker, which was for a while, Europe's largest kind of Airbnb property management company in the short stay sector. We started what became Marriott Homes and Villas, which was a really cool kind of landmark. Post that, I ended up working for myself for 4 years. A little bit of consulting around strategy and innovation in hospitality travel. Like, where does it go next? How do people think about the guest experience? But once the pandemic hit, my efforts turned into something called Atolo. So I always had a real passion for mentoring and developing others through the industry. And I definitely benefited. Like, that's how you learn in hospitality, right? You just have to learn from other people who've done it before. So we set up a digital mentoring platform. We grew to about 4,000 professionals. We had leaders from Marriott, Hilton, Expedia, giving their time to, the next generation of travel and hospitality leaders who really needed it. So that was a lot of fun. We got a couple of small funding rounds, kind of tided things over. And then Stripe came calling. So, Stripe's been going for kind of 15 years or so, but really doubled down on its focus on hospitality and travel. Wanted someone to lead that business. So I exited Atolo, and then I've been here kind of close to 3 years. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Never really been on that kind of tech side before as 2 feet in as I am now, but learning every day and really enjoying it.
I love it. And shout out to you for building what you built at Atolo, because I totally agree with the mentorship side of things. I wouldn't be where I am today with Hospitality FM and our whole network without amazing mentors and guests like you and everyone else that we've had on the show for the last 7 years. I've only gotten here because of my learnings through, amazing conversations like this, 100% dedicated to that. And I think, it's so important, so underestimated for a lot of people in our space, and especially younger professionals coming up in the industry. They're kind of baptism by fire, as when you work at a hotel or a short-term rental company. So it's very, very cool to hear what you've built and how it kind of led into Stripe. And for the listeners, obviously, if they don't know what Stripe is, which would be a big, big shocker for me if I, found out that there was listeners that didn't understand what Stripe was or is. But can you give us a high-level overview of Stripe for the listeners' sake? Also, Hospitality FM has been a customer of Stripe since we formed in 2021. We signed up through your guys' Atlas program. Super easy, super great. We do all our billing and invoicing through Stripe. So it's been a great platform. Plus the customer portal that you guys have in there really saved me a ton of time. So I was like, oh man, I'm so happy that you guys have features like that. So give a high level overview of Stripe and kind of what you do within the Stripe ecosystem with travel and hospitality companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So no ego at all to talk about what Stripe's up to. And I would never expect anyone to know, really, partly because not everyone thinks about this stuff all the time, and partly because payments as a strategic theme hasn't been that high on people's radar. And also Stripe hasn't always been as focused on hospitality as it's been the last few years. So great times kind of level set. Stripe's history is it set out to solve the complexity of online payments kind of 15 years ago. It was kind of a couple of Irish teenagers taking on the powerhouse of, kind of some of the legacy tech and people like PayPal. But whether you were selling for a business like yours or you were running a global hotel chain, taking payments online was really tricky, especially when you add in kind of the international dimension of doing that consistently across multiple countries. But fast forward 15 years, and I think Stripe has just grown and grown and grown in terms of the problems and missions it sets out to solve for its customers. So the way I think about it now is that payments is really a strategic infrastructure every company needs. everyone is bringing in payments from customers, right? And let's take the hotel space. You've got people who are booking online direct, people who are booking online third party. You've got people who need to pay at terminals. That's the front desk. That's your restaurants. That's your spa. That's a QR code in room. So you've got all these kind of traditional and innovative ways people want to pay. And then typically you need to manage that money. As you talk about, there might be, just basic reporting and performance analytics of like, where's your business coming from? There might be stuff like chargebacks and fraud management. And then you've got this whole payouts ecosystem too, which is, hey, if you're a franchise chain, well, chances are they're the merchant of record, not you. So you got to settle up with them. If you're paying event managers, OTAs, TMCs, distributors, staff, you've got this huge ecosystem, which has typically been the problem, if you like, of the CFO. And that's changed over the years as well, from kind of bank payments to virtual cards to some of the cool stuff you can do now with stablecoins. So it's a really fascinating space. And I think Stripe have realized that hospitality and travel is square in the middle of this as a huge opportunity, as an industry that probably hasn't yet woken up to just how powerful this could be in terms of better guest experience, better direct bookings and higher revenues, simpler operations. And so it just feels like it's a really great time to focus on it. I guess secret sauce, at the end of all this as well, is that you can actually monetize a lot of this. So although the hotel chains, the OTAs should definitely be thinking about, hey, we need a modern payment infrastructure. If you're a technology company now, you think about a Muse on the PMS side, a Self-Book on the booking engine side. Think about people like Seven Rooms pushing dinings. Actually, if you can start take payments through your software, typically you can make a little bit of margin on that as well. So suddenly these SaaS technology businesses trying to also help the industry are able to make a little bit more money themselves, and kind of think about payments as a revenue stream. So kind of wherever you look, it feels like there's this strategic opportunity in payments. And you asked about my role. My job is to bring that to life for our customers. So I spend a lot of time kind of on the marketing, on the telling the story, on just making sure people really understand how great and relevant this could be. Quite a lot of time on the business development side. So are we having the right chats with the big hotel groups, big technology groups, big travel agencies, car rental companies, and then quite a lot of time with product and risk. So actually just making sure that Stripe has got the right connectors and integrations, the right partnerships, the right profile in terms of the way we manage risk, because that's always been a component when your guest wants to make a booking now but might not be staying for 6 months. You're like, there's a risk element there you got to manage. So I get this really fun role kind of covering all of that. And just get to spend the day explaining that to customers, traveling the world, and joining you on podcasts.
All right, Slick Talkers, as we continue to dive into this conversation of payments and how we can solve a lot of your business problems and understanding of how hospitality businesses can better utilize platforms like Stripe, I want to share about how you can better utilize and make the guest experience for your short-term rental business with Fido. If you are having your housekeepers come back to the house to take the bin to the curb and to make this kind of chaotic process within your hospitality operations, think again and get Fido. If you go to getfido.com, you can sign up with our partners at Fido for their bin to curb service, where you have the peace of mind of never having to take out the trash again. Literally, your housekeepers come in, they clean the house, they put the trash into the bin, and they never have to remember to take it to the curb on trash day. The number one thing that easily slips through the cracks of operations, just like short-term rental companies all over the world have realized when they didn't sign up with Fido. So now if you sign up for Fido today and you're on a current provider that does a bin to curb service, they will give you $50 per property that you convert to Fido. Such a great deal, such a great way to save some money and of course, streamline your operations so that way you are having seamless guest experience. Now we are back to the episode with James Lemon at Stripe here on Slick Talk. I love it. And yeah, one of the conversations that I think has happened on this show and a couple of our other shows quite often is the terms of, especially with payments and direct bookings, which I know we're going to get into kind of later on in this episode. But, payments is actually such a high friction point. I'm realizing more and more often than not in my daily life, right? When I go shopping or if I go to the grocery store and all these things, right? Payments can actually cause, especially as I think a lot of people are moving away from physical cards to more digital wallets, like you said, stable coins, which I would love to jump into because I have very, very little understanding of stable coins and was listening to the All In episode where the founders of Stripe were talking about stable coins and stuff. So all things we'll get into, but I actually kind of want to talk about, payments as a potentially broken system in hospitality, kind of jumping into the big picture. So like, what do you think in hospitality are the biggest pain points when it comes to payments itself?
Yeah, I think there's really three big pain points in hospitality payments right now. One is, we'll call it the kind of book direct or the customer experience upfront, which is that, we've a lot of hotel companies have still got the same kind of online checkout they had 10 years ago. Like it's kind of a place to put in, a credit card or debit card number after you've done all the fancy stuff of selecting the room. In 2025, that's just not good enough. Like it just doesn't keep up with the market. If you look at what you see in, I'm not even going to say other categories, but yeah, certainly if you look at like any retail website right now, but also if you look at the OTAs, and that is where your customers are looking, typically there's an option to split your payments into a couple of installments, right? That could be just, hey, pay it off before you stay, or it could be one of these buy now, pay laters, like an Affirm or a Klarna. Typically there'll be Apple Pay or Google Pay. And it's just amazing what these wallets can do. The one-click checkouts when you're sitting on the sofa or you're on the go and you need to get something booked. It really drives conversion. And then kind of lesser known, there are these local payment methods. So although, cards are still pretty dominant in the US and in the UK, if you're in Mexico, you're probably using OXXO. If you're in Brazil, you're using Pix. If you're, in Germany, you're into your Gyrobank and your PayPals. If you're in Poland, you Blick. So, there's hundreds of these different local payment methods. And if you're from that country, that's what you're familiar with and it's what you trust and it's what and it's what is popular with customers. So if you're an international brand or you're a brand in one country, but you want international travelers, having a website checkout or a mobile app checkout that is automatically watching for where that customer's coming from, how they might have paid it before, what kind of mobile device they're on, even adjusting things based on how much they're spending and personalizing that checkout experience. So the thing that will convert at that moment in time, that's hugely powerful. And that can offer, way more direct bookings than many of the other things that people think of as their marketing funnel. And that's before you get into the behind the scenes tech, which is, I'll meet with the hotel CFO and they'll tell me that their authorization rate is 70%. And that means when a customer presses pay, only 7 in 10 times does the actual transaction work. The rest of the time, it's like, there's an error. There's an undefined error of some description. So we can instantly get people kind of up to the high 90s because, we've just got more modern rails that are connected to all the banks that get involved in payments. But we can also push back to a merchant and say, actually, this is exactly why, this has been declined. So I'm going down a massive rabbit hole, but a favorite example of mine is there's an OTA in Australia that if it comes back saying the card's declines as insufficient funds, they automatically put a new offer in front of the customer. You're like, look, do you just want to spread this payment over 3 months? And the conversion went up by 20% because the customer's like, oh yeah, actually, it's payday next week and I'll just take care of it. So there's a huge opportunity in book direct. The second theme I'd say is really ancillaries. So, the hotel is such a crucial part of the stay. And once you've got their trust that hey, I want to stay at your hotel. This is where I want to put my head for the night. Well, you've got such a great opportunity to help unlock the rest of that stay. If it's a business trip, like, do they need a co-work? Do they need a meeting space? Do they need a transfer? If it's a leisure, is it more about tours and activities or travel insurance? But, we are really behind as an industry in thinking about really modern retailing. And if we do, we're like, hey, maybe reserve it now and just let the front desk know if you want this. That's not really what customers want to do. They want to lock in and know what they're getting. So we really help them with all these little payment moments. You can send out payment links. You can create new apps and you can save their card details. They can just do that stuff in one click later. There's all these ways to kind of drive ancillary revenues. And that, I think, is a really big theme as hotels try and really squeeze every dollar they can out of the guests and help them have a better trip. And then the third piece is really just like the kind of staff experience of payments is just shocking, right? It's just shocking. Like if you're a hotel and your operations team, they're doing these night audits and charging all the cards for the next day. Like you haven't had to do that for 10, 20 years. But hotels still do it. They're just that's how they've always done it. If you're a finance director, you've got 4 or 5 different ways that you are partnering with people on payments. So you've got to go and reconcile it all. And then if your technology team and your genius marketeer comes and says, hey, let's put Klarna in the checkout, that might take you 6 months or so. And so Stripe unlocks this huge efficiency around actually, it's all out the box. It's all low, no code, or really simple to integrate. And that's because we have this DNA coming from smaller companies. So you can apply exactly that same DNA to less technical people in enterprises too. And then just a really modern way to run it to simplify things for ops and finance teams. So there's lots of reasons why it is the way it is. I think hotels are busy. Again, one of the things I learned from Atolo is we're all flat out in this job, right? We haven't necessarily been sat down and trained how this works and what to do next. Some of the stuff just changes so fast, you can't keep up. But I think as long as you're out there thinking, where are the big pools of value? Where can I do better guest experience and think about modern technology? I think payments is a great place to start because there's thousands of hours to save, there's tons more direct bookings to get, and there's more dollars per traveler. So I think it's such a great business case of where I'd prioritize my time.
All right. Earlier in this episode, I even mentioned that Hostfully uses platforms like Stripe in order to benefit their business and not just make revenue off of unit counts or property management companies scaling, but they can actually use Stripe as a way to help their business and customers like you streamline their operations and make it easier and have all the solutions of the things that we're talking about on today's episode. So shout out to Hostfully for integrating with innovative companies like Stripe and many others in the industry. Hostfully is more than just a calendar syncing platform. It's a unified inbox. It's an amazing marketplace for other technology tools like price management and, of course, operational management and many, many other things, including payments. So if you go to hostfully.com and you use the code HFM300, you will get $300 off onboarding. And of course, there's going to be a link in the show notes where you can grab a demo with our friend Frank at Hostfully, who has been on the podcast, shares amazing insights, and is just as enthusiastic about operators scaling their business and streamlining their operations with a platform like Hostfully. Hostfully has been a great partner with us for over 4 years on this podcast, and it's just been amazing to see the development and product growth that they have done for operators just like you. So if you are tired of the headaches of operating your business with all these different softwares and all this clunkiness, go to Hostfully, sign up today using the code HFM. That's H as in Hector, F as in Foxtrot, M as in Mike, 300 today, and you'll get $300 off your onboarding. So go ahead and check them out. Thank you, Hostfully. And now we are back to the episode with James Lemon on Slick Talk. 100%. I love, there's so many things we go into. But one of the things I'm kind of curious about is, you kind of talked about the ancillary side of things for hospitality businesses like hotels and short-term rentals. And one of the things I've always kind of seen with companies that don't use something like Stripe or, more modern technology in general is we struggle to productize these services, right? Like the early check-ins or the upsells and the customization and personalization, which is definitely where the industry is going more and more towards, especially with the enhancement of AI nowadays. But I guess why has it taken it so long? Is it because there hasn't been a true Stripe in the industry, or what do you think has taken hotels and hospitality businesses forever to get to a more modernized side of things when it comes to their tech? I love how you used Muse as an example, right? With, adding payments into their line of business. So not only are they able to make money from their customers that, grow a portfolio on the property management software, but then they can also, take a small portion or have a nice little margin on the payment side of things. So with companies like that, and I know actually tons of property management softwares that do that, our sponsors at Hostfully do that as well, right? Where they have Stripe as their payment processor. They take a small percentage on top of it for direct bookings, et cetera. So it's a great way, but I feel like it's still underutilized. So is it just because, like you said, we're all just so busy running these 24-hour businesses, trying to do these things, trying to provide a good guest experience, that the bandwidth opportunity and probably lack of IT budget as well kind of comes into play, where there just isn't really someone to take control of this area of the business?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes to all of those, and probably a couple others as well. And I think that's why the the new software companies like a Hostfully or, a Cloudbeds or ResNexus, doing this for their customers, I think there's a ton of value there because what they're able to offer their hoteliers, vacation rental hosts is an integrated solution. It's like, look, we know you might have high staff turnover. We know they're not super technical. We know you don't have an in-house tech team who, can bolt together this stuff. So let us just put it all in one stack, all in one screen and let it work seamlessly. And so I think that's where they're earning their value, if you like, and they deserve that margin because it should just be much more efficient for your staff. So that hopefully takes care of, hey, we didn't get around to this because it looked like it was more integrations or I need a specialist. So that's really lovely. But I think there's a couple other things at play as well. I think the main dominant model for hotels, as in the US is franchise. And so I think payments has been a very sensitive subject to look at because if you are a large hotel chain, your franchisees, like that's their money. And so until technology like Stripe existed, in order to step into the flow, the hotel chain would have to become perhaps merchant of record. And it's like, and that is still an option. You go, right, we're going to control a central brand experience, and then we're going to let the hotels have the money, kind of when we're ready. And the hoteliers have a lot of battles with the owners, and that's one they don't want to pick. So Stripe's got a great product called Connect, which is actually best of both worlds. You can create that central brand experience, but each hotel kind of gets its little child or sub account, and they can still stay merchant of records. That's what like the likes of an Accor or a Best Western are rolling out, so that every one of their hotels now gets a Stripe account, and they get to kind of benefit from that. So that's another piece. Is this payments is sensitive between, I think, kind of brands and owners and who holds that. So we've worked really hard to make sure that we can kind of remove that from the argument as well. I think the other thing is that just finance stuff generally is a little bit scary. It's like, hey, I'm going to leave that to the CFO or the treasury team. And so I think typically finance has just been lumped with, hey, you'll take care of negotiating with the card networks. And I think there's a lovely opportunity, if I haven't made the point kind of clear, is like there's a lovely opportunity to elevate this to a real leadership discussion and make someone accountable across the business for not just payments as, tooling, infrastructure and cost, but actually payments as revenue and growth. And I think the companies that I see do that, which often are the software companies, but like we're seeing more and more of the big hotel chains, big OTAs do that. They're the ones that start to unlock the value fastest because they go actually better guest experience, more revenues, more payment moments during the trip. That's where the real value lies. So I think definitely optimistic about the kind of months and years ahead.
Yeah, I know on our pre-chat we talked about trust, and one of the things I hear often from independent hoteliers or even vacation rental management companies when they're looking at building their own book direct site and having a booking engine and integrating this technology from their property management software to their operations, their CRM, right? Like all the moving pieces that go into it. I think a lot of it comes into not just the payment side, but the trust side of it with guests, right? So I think you and I, when we were doing our first pre-chat, we discussed how Stripe can kind of play as a role of trust. And I do love your guys' product, the Link product, where it does make it more, I don't know, it feels like there's a nice cover for the guest where it's less invasive, maybe less out in the open type situation. Because I think when you have a clunky payment experience, right, when I'm booking a hotel or if I'm booking a short-term rental, and it just looks like it's made in 1995 and I probably won't trust it as much. I'm hesitant, to give my card info, and I'm hesitant to book and, allocate the $1,800 or whatever the, payment sum amount is. And so talk to me about how you guys, talk to me about how you guys envision trust within this payment journey with guests and travelers that definitely want these experiences. They want more than a room. They want more than a home, right? They want to be able to have the private chef and the, rental car or maybe the upsell car of the Tesla inside the garage, depending on, the type of brand that they're staying with. And I love the Accor side of things because obviously that's a big brand example. But for the independents, right? Like this is something that they have to always fight for is trust and trust and trust and getting away from the OTAs. So yeah, how do you guys, look at trust with Stripe as a payment platform?
No, there's so many layers to trust, Will. Just kind of run through. I think firstly, there's just the vendor trust, which is essential if someone's handling your money and handling your guests' money. So Stripe itself obsesses about trust. So we have, I'm very lucky. I'm one person, but the Stripe's 8,000 people, over half of them are technical and engineers. So they obsess about this stuff all the time. So we have, kind of 5 nines of uptime. So we literally never go down. You're more likely to be struck by lightning than, have Stripe not work. And we're the only company that publish our uptime on our website as well. So like, it always works. That's a big piece of trust. And that hasn't always been the case in the payment space. So like, we realize we have to earn people's trust too. Once that's done and they've got a kind of Stripe checkout, where do you go next with trust? Look, I think there's so many things that affect customer trust, but you absolutely hit on all of them. It's like, it's as simple as like, does this user experience feel relatively clean? Right. And there's hundreds of little optimizations you make to a checkout of like, actually, it sounds really funny, but like the little numbers on your credit card start to separate into the 4s that match, or the little icon comes up saying, yep, this is a valid Amex. There's all these kind of little things you can do. Like we did a state of the checkout report, and something like 97% of US and Europe, websites have basic mistakes that just is putting off your customers before they start. So I think there's all these kind of little optimizations that like, I feel safe on this page, showing the right currency at the right time. And you can make a little bit of margin when you do that. Showing the right language, showing the right payment type. All those things. Link is something a little bit different. So Link is actually a product where if we've ever seen you book anything on the Stripe network before, and we see something like 90% of cards in the world every year, and process about $1 trillion. So we've seen pretty much all the cards. When someone lands on your independent hotel's website, if it's a Stripe page, as soon as they kind of put in their email address or their cell phone number, it instantly pops up and it's like, kind of welcome back, Will, effectively. And if you're pre-logged in, you just do a one-click checkout. If you're not, it just does that thing, where it pings the 6 digits to your phone. You just load them in. And then again, so it's saved. It can save, different credit cards. It can save your bank details if you want to pay by bank, which hotels love because it's cheaper. And we turned it on with a small Mexican hotel chain. So just a few hotels, Oasis hotels. Now a third of their customers check out that way. So they've never been they haven't necessarily been on the Oasis Hotels website before, but they may have just, they may have used it from Airbnb or an Uber. These are also kind of linked customers. And straight away, when they're on the Oasis, they're like, and they're not even thinking, this is a Stripe customer. They're like, this website already knows my payment details. And it's exactly the same user experience I get on all these other websites. So I'm much more likely to just book and secure that than I am to be like, I'm not sure I trust this. Let me use an OTA. And I think that's a huge opportunity for hoteliers. So, pick a trusted payment platform, make sure that checkout's optimized for the kind of way your customer's going to want to see it, currency and payment types. And then, really think about something like Link, or just saving their credit cards any which way that really appeals to that kind of loyalty piece of like, I feel recognized, I feel heard, and there's trust here. So I think that's central to everything we think about in this industry.
100%. One of the things I've always kind of said is the reason why Airbnb dominates so much in the short-term rental sector is because of their ease of use, right? Like when I go to book an Airbnb or a short-term rental, it is so easy to hit that payment, option without like click booked, without having to second guess and obviously have like buyer's remorse or anything like that. Versus when I'm on a book direct site and it's, 16 steps. I have to enter my name and my email again. And then I have to enter the digits and then the expiration date and then the CVV and then, all the things that go into it. It's just like, okay, like there's way more moments throughout the journey that I have, opportunity to abandon my cart or to abandon the trip or to abandon this because of, X, Y, and Z things. And Airbnb has made it so easy. So I love that you said that, but I'm kind of curious and just in general, where do you see biggest, trends shaping or, biggest trends of, payment shaping hospitality today? Because one thing I'm really a big fan of through the Stripe platform personally is the opportunity for membership options, right? So, a lot of podcasters go to Patreon, and I don't know if Patreon's a customer of Stripe or not, but you go to these other things where people can do membership options. And for me, yes, it's great and it's good, kind of like an OTA, basically, if you look at it from a creator's perspective. But I would rather just much control that myself, right? If I have the opportunity to create a membership tier and plug it into my website and to plug it into my email newsletter and to, continue to move forward with my content, my audience, it makes more sense. And I just love like that opportunity that I wouldn't get with another payment operator in the industry. So kind of tell me where you guys see this shaping hospitality today with innovation.
Yeah, so I think memberships is a huge space for hospitality to grow into over the next few years. I think as an extension of how we think about loyalty and really getting that customer buy-in to like, yeah, you being more active part of someone's kind of life and lifestyle. I think it's huge. And again, we'll see OTAs doing it more and more. They're all doubling down on their loyalty programs. So it's a great kind of retention play, just making sure you don't lose them. I think you have to get smart about it. I think let's just dive into a couple of real examples, right? If you think about the new disloyalty program from Ennismore, which you probably know as like the Hoxton Hotels, SLS, Glen Eagles, again, it's a B2B chain, actually. You don't really think about it, but a kind of portfolio of different brands, Hoxton being the biggest. But the way they've gone with disloyalty is, it's an annual membership, and you get kind of 20% off at any hotel and 10% off F&B all the time. I think they recognize people don't stay in hotels like all the time, so they've just gone really simply. Look, you can get kind of one cup of coffee every day, which is cute. So if you're in Shoreditch in London, you can pop into the Hoxton. If you're in Williamsburg, pop into Hoxton. If you're in Miami, just pop and grab a coffee at SLS just off the beach. So that'll kind of pick up the kind of local residents or just kind of people who know that there's one of those in their neighborhood. And then they use it really intelligently. So if they've got a new hotel opening for the first few months, they'll be like, look, these are the hotels and there's like 50% off. If you remember, you get 50% off these hotels. And so they've got like so Maldives that's just been 50% off for like 6 months. And unfortunately, I'm not in the market for going to the Maldives anytime soon, but that's amazing, right? So now you're lighting up your Instagram and your membership emails with just this kind of inspirational piece. So I think that they've really managed to lock people in to go, right, it is worth an annual budget because actually you only have to do one or two of those offers and it pays for itself. And that's a big psychology of membership. Like, I just need to feel like it's paid for itself. Then you get the sense of, it's not just about my hotels. Actually, there's a kind of an F&B and a coffee element here too. And then you get the marketing piece of, hey, big deep cut offers, it's exclusivity. And I think if you can kind of get those 3 or 4 pillars right, you've got the basis of a membership program. And then people are obviously paying you upfront, what we would call SaaS fees, right? Like, that is a repeatable fee every month or every year. And so suddenly you've got a new business model. So if you want to take that to investors or your marketing team, like, you've got this whole new way of earning money and engaging. And people have been doing this for years. When I was at IHG, the Intercontinental Ambassador was exactly the same program, but just kind of a little bit kind of more traditional. And we see the same. We power Accor Plus, which is the big APAC program for Accor. It's done some really cool partnerships. So I think it might be Subaru, their car manufacturer. Hey, you buy a car, you get this kind of Accor Plus. They've got loads of Australian hotels. You're out in the outback. Of course, it makes sense. You crash at their hotels. So I think it just really elevates that brand. I like to think of it as like the Amazon Prime effect. Like, once you've got it, like, why go anywhere else? I'm booking a holiday. Like, I'll check your booking.com. So I'm loyal to a couple of hotels, but I'll always check the disloyalty app now. I'm like, well, what do they have in this city? And like, I could get 20 or even 50% off this, and I should probably just stop by and grab my free coffee sometime. So look, I think memberships is huge, especially if you can kind of touch people's lives on a kind of weekly or monthly basis. I think it's fantastic. We did a white paper on this, which we can kind of share the link to your listeners. But I think really thinking about where you get into the membership space, linking kind of rooms, F&B, leisure, I think there's a huge play for the industry that I'm surprised more people haven't already launched something, because straight out of the pandemic, it was a great kind of revenue earner.
Yeah. Well, I promise there's going to be connecting dots to this thought and point that I'm about to make. But, I listened to your episode with Josiah McKenzie on the Hospitality Daily podcast, which was great insights. And I love that you kind of brought up a lot of these innovations with him. And then one of the things that I've really enjoyed, and, I even had Josiah on Slick Talk, and we talked about how hotels, or at least back in my day when, I was a hotel front desk agent and a manager, where I felt, our guests, our loyalty guests, right? Like, yes, they come in every week or every month or whatever their kind of consistent schedule was. But that was a small percentage of your guests, right? Like, there's a very few that were the repeat customers that you're always excited to see check in, especially if you're in a leisure market. And I've always kind of stated, like, hotels have failed to look at the 5 blocks around them, right? Like, within their own backyard to monetize and to grow revenue. Because if we're so focused on ADR, and I again promise there's points to this, but we're so focused on these ADR numbers and all these things, but there's so much room inside the property to monetize and to grow revenue. And I'm a member at the Clayton Hotel down here in Denver, Colorado, as my co-working space. So that's my way of getting out of my home office and out of my, sweats and pajamas or whatever I'm wearing at home. And it's a good way to go and one, get out to socialize, but two, you have that kind of, I don't know, from a hotel's perspective, I could see how their yearly membership that I pay and all the other members pay can add way more to their bottom line outside of ADR, especially during low season, especially when they're accepting new memberships during that period of time. And it can be kind of like a SaaS product, like you said. And to tie this together, having Richard Valter on the show, we talked about how hotels don't own mind share enough, or share of wallet even, to the point like Nike or Lululemon or, these other brands, Apple, right? Like, I'm thinking about Apple products daily because I have every Apple product under the sun, and they just ingrain themselves as a brand into my world and my ecosystem. Yet there's not really a hotel brand or a hospitality brand. Maybe for me, I consider Uber to be a pretty big hospitality travel brand, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. But like outside of that, not really many hotels or brands in the industry get that mind share outside of the 8 hours that the guest is spending inside the room or the hotel, or not the hotel, sorry, the home. So to be able to incorporate something like this, which is so instrumental for hotels and property management companies or management brands that don't make the biggest margin, right? Like, they're not really like, they may be getting a 250 night ADR, but they're getting a small percentage of that after labor costs and ownership fees and brand fees and all these other things, right? It's a hard industry to make big profits. So to add a membership piece, for me, like you said, I'm shocked that more hotels, especially on the independent side, have not implemented something like this because of the perk and reward, where people feel like they're kind of gamifying the hotel experience without having to stay overnight and pay $300 or $200 for a room. But really get the full experience, which incorporates more revenue to food and beverage, like you said, and valet and all the other fun stuff. So I'm a big fan of memberships, in the term of it changes and solves that problem of focusing on the 5 blocks around you, right? Like, it's not just about leisure travel and convention travel. Like, you can actually truly capture the local audience in a deeper and more meaningful way as a brand than I think most of these international brands can, until they actually incorporate something similar.
Yeah, memberships is also core to what hospitality is, right? Think about it. It's status, it's recognition, it's a sense of belonging, right? All of these things. It's just that literally is what hospitality is. I'm also a massive sucker for it as well. I drive my friends and family crazy because I will literally join absolutely everything. And of course, I'm one of those suckers, like 30-day free trial. I'm like, I'll definitely remember to cancel it. I definitely don't. But I'm also, I guess my point is, I'm amazed I don't see it more. Because, I'm in Wimbledon, Southwest London. If there were just a couple of, bars, restaurants, co-working spaces, retailers that had like slightly stronger membership programs, like I'd be in there all the time. So it's really interesting how it hasn't penetrated. I think it's very much a SaaS software thing. Everyone's nailed it. I think I'm really intrigued as to, maybe your listeners have got some really innovative real world memberships that are in their local area that they love. I'd love to hear more about that. And we did see some of that innovation in the pandemic. I worked with a mentor from a hotel in the north of England, and he'd spun up a wine club. He'd never thought about this before, but he's like, right, it's a pandemic. I've got no one to sell my rooms to. But I've got staff and they need something to do. So he would do really cool things like that. He had a little membership club for cyclists, so they could just kind of come every Sunday morning, kind of coffee and a bacon bun or whatever, after their cycle. It just really got innovative around kind of community memberships and how to monetize that. You have to get creative. And it is a project, right? It's not just going to fall in your lap. You have to kind of design it. But what's lovely is that Stripe just have out the box tech to make it work. So at least you don't have to stress about that. You can think about, what are the offers and what's the proposition? How do I get the word out there? And that's where kind of obviously, this loyalty program or Oracle Plus focus their time. But behind the scenes, you're like, oh, thank goodness, like all of that complexity of like recurring billing, updating card details, like chasing people, all of that stuff's automated in the background, which is really what you need when you're an independent hotel. And it would be an extra business to your core business.
For sure. And I love the articles that you've been publishing on LinkedIn. I've been reading them before coming into this conversation. And one thing I actually kind of wanted to ask you that was kind of more off script from the document that I sent you, but it's something I'm kind of looking more and more into in the industry. I'm not a product guy. I don't design product. I don't, live in the world of product. I have very much a service-based business, not a product-based business. But the more I kind of get into these conversations with operators that are looking at products to incorporate into their tech stack or incorporate into their own business with like goods, we have a coffee brand, so that's our first like official product. But the number one thing I'm seeing when people jump ship from a tech solution, whether it's an operations software or property management software, they say like, oh, it didn't do this, or it wasn't easy for us to do this and that, and our business really needs that, core thing. And yet I see them jump and then they go to another product, or they connect two products that have the same features and functionalities. And so they're paying for double type situations. And one of our listeners and great guests on the show, Robin Cragen with Moving Mountains, calls it 20 bucking to death, right? Where they $20 this, $20 there, $20 there. And next thing you know, your margin has gone to these softwares that all really do the same thing. The point two and question I have for you, when it comes to Stripe as a product, right, and the features and functionalities, you guys have a ton of stuff from Connect to Link and many other things that I don't even know how to use yet within our Stripe account. I see a lot of people not knowing and deeper product understanding of what they sign up for when it comes to something like a Stripe or an operations software, and they jump ship and they go to something different, and it causes more headache, and it just is a repetitive death cycle of tech. So what are some things in the terms of the Stripe product that you think core operators need to know, whether they're a hotelier or a short-term rental management company? When it comes to Stripe, I would just love to know, like, maybe misunderstood products or features within the platform that you guys see every day that like they just didn't dig deep enough on the site, or dig deep enough or ask the right question in terms of what they're trying to solve within their business. I'm always kind of curious on that product missed opportunity.
Yeah, it's such a great observation, because I think the classic business school mantra is do one thing and do it really well. And I'll listen to we have a kind of infamous fireside chat every Friday where the two founders will bring customers on and demos from people, like innovations. Or we'll just have an internal strategy document. I'm like, oh my goodness, there are 50 things in here that I'm like, how are we supposed to understand it, let alone our customers? But so I will definitely simplify it. I think really there's two main things that Stripe, you should think of Stripe for, right? One is all of your kind of pay-ins, all the way your companies get business. So you're right, like probably 99% of customers on Stripe have a kind of, some kind of checkout, and they're just getting credit cards paid in. So that's a pretty good place to start. And I think after that, that's who kind of, every business needs that. Yeah. Have a play around, because that's where you can then turn on Link, and you can turn on, your local payment methods. You can turn on Klarna. And there's even little, if you've got the time, that we just launched last year. You can actually just A/B test within Stripe. So if you just want to put like 5% of your traffic, we'll see, Affirm as a buy now, pay later. At the end of the month, you can come back and be like, oh, actually, I got a conversion uplift, or they actually, they always got the suite and got a bigger basket size out of it. So there's kind of a suite there around B2C, and I could just load loads of geeky stuff on there. We've got a product that will automatically show international travelers things in their currency, and it's just adding a slither of margin that we can share with hotels. Like that's really cool. We've also got our fraud tool, and that's the one that's put that in the category of I never talk about that enough. I'll talk to a hotel chain for like a day, and they'll be like, do you do anything around fraud? I was like, oh my God, do we do anything around fraud? So because we see 90% of the cards in the world before, we have this machine learning where we know all the good cards and all the bad cards. And there's a great blog I just read from someone at Stripe around fraud management. And literally, I didn't know this was legal. We also buy all of the dark web lists of illegal credit cards, just like the criminal gangs do. And we feed our fraud machine with them. And then when the fake cards hit us, which because of AI now has just gone through the roof, like fraud attacks, we've already able to block all those cards. So international fraud is going crazy up. We've got this great graph about how it's coming down on Stripe. So all of that stuff is right there, and you just kind of have a little dig around. And then the other suite I'd say that people don't really think about is the payouts. You've got the pay-ins, all the stuff in consumer, you've got the payouts, paying all your suppliers. So not a lot of people know that we issue virtual cards, like a lot of the OTAs like to do to pay their suppliers. Well, a hotel could do that to make sure its staff have got expense cards, right? Or we've got something new called recipient payouts. You can just send money straight to people's bank accounts in other countries, so reducing all those foreign exchange costs. We've got this Connect product, so your suppliers can actually onboard and almost be part of your own little personal ecosystem. And now we've got stablecoins. So actually, if you want to pay some of these more kind of far-flung, unstable markets, you can use, all kind of currency back. So it's not the kind of gambling crypto. You've got kind of new ways to pay. So again, you don't have to know all that, but just think payouts and think kind of CFO products about actually how do you help manage the back end of your business in terms of, what a finance director or a treasury director would look at. So the point I was going to come back to is that why do people leave SaaS companies? I've seen SaaS companies, I've worked in SaaS companies. It kind of comes back to trust again. But ultimately, as a business, you're always going to think of new things. You're going to be like, I need X, I need Y. I've read about this. Whether you read James Lemon's blogs or someone else's blog, like you just learn more as you kind of go through your career. Ultimately, I think a lot of SaaS providers don't live up to their roadmap, right? I think the secret of choosing a great SaaS provider is I need someone great for today and I need someone great for the future. I think one of the things I've loved about joining Stripe is that we are fantastic today. We're still young, we're still building, but the future is just ridiculous. Like we launch so much stuff every year that we announce at our bigger conference sessions and our Stripe tours around the world. Like it's really hard for people to keep up. But I guess where I take faith, coming back to your original point, is like we've got all of these self-serve docs. So if you just go and type in like Klarna in your Stripe docs or like more efficient payouts or fraud, it's like, it doesn't matter that a salesperson hasn't sat down and gone, don't worry, Will, you can do 20 things. When you need it, it's there. So it's like, get the basics right, keep the basics simple, keep building amazing stuff for the future, and just be there when your kind of customers need you. And I think if you can get that right, then you'll be a great SaaS company. You won't churn customers. And ultimately, like, you'll still be there in 5-10 years time, getting customers excited. And last point I'll make, Stripe is very rarely the cheapest, right? So you kind of have to be that good because you don't want to be in one of those battles of like, look, everyone else is a little bit cheaper. I'm like, yeah, but when your payment system goes down at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon when everyone's checking in, like, what are you going to do? Don't you want to be with a system that's never gone down, or whatever it is? Like fraud might be another one. Like, oh, this hey, this is a little bit more expensive than we used to paying. Yeah, but like, what does fraud cost you? Like, what does not winning chargebacks cost you? And so I think there's a real value story here that any SaaS business should be able to explain, and it's something I think really carefully about at Stripe because I know the economics of the industry. I know it's hard to make good money in hospitality. Like the tech has to really pay for itself.
100%. And on a side note, I wrote, I need to talk to you about payouts for our account because I'm tired of paying the bank fees as well and doing it all manually. It's something I haven't. So I'm a perfect use case of the question that I asked you. But two, I want to talk about fraud because, I have a good friend in the industry, Ella, with AutoHost, and she's really passionate about, helping operators with less fraud, basically ensuring that you can trust, especially a lot of short-term rental management companies are remote, right? Where they don't have physical humans checking you in. Credit card is charged upon booking. And then you get a door code the day before and the instructions. And then basically that's it, right? So I want to go into fraud. So one, when I was a hotel manager before jumping into full-time podcasts, I know the amount of chargebacks that we got, especially from OTAs. And I'm glad Booking has kind of solved this issue a little bit for their site. But chargebacks was insane. And the amount of time and labor spent on fighting chargebacks from the accounting department to then me, to then my GM or my director of, whatever, it was just chaos. And I know we just wasted a ton of time and ton of money from the owner's perspective on fighting chargebacks that were $100 or $70 or whatever, right? Like these little things. And would love to know in the terms of fraud, AI, how this is scaling, because I know, and I'm a big fan of AI and I believe it's going to help a lot of operators with operational efficiencies, but there's the dark side of it where people are going to use it to their advantage of fraudulent cards and all this other stuff. So kind of break down, I would love to hear your areas that you guys are looking at with fraud, chargebacks, how you guys are, obviously with 90% of the credit cards in the world ever been used on Stripe, you have a really good list of understanding on how that works, but I know people are just getting crazier smarter with all these different methods that I can't even think of. So yeah, let's jump into fraud and the chargeback situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So fraud is increasing. And I think that customers are more likely to charge back than they were in the past. Credit card companies seem to be making it easier. Customers are sharing tips online. So it's not going to go away on any platform, and no SaaS company can make it perfect. But I think what a few things I'm finding is, one is there's still a certain amount of friendly fraud. And that's actually, we could do a better job of the hotel industry for explaining stuff to customers. So, really simple things, like it might be that, the right name isn't appearing on a credit card. So a customer goes to it a month later and they just didn't recognize it. It might well be a customer didn't know when they were going to get charged, right? It might be that they kind of thought they'd use one card, used another. So bills pop up in unexpected places. So I think we've got a job to do to be crystal clear on what you're going to get paid, when, and make sure any kind of repeated payments get communicated in kind of plenty of time, right? So I think there's definitely a piece there that it's just like, you can actually just reduce friendly fraud. And then of course you get, basic customer satisfaction of just staying on top of a customer while they're there, which is just how's it all going? Have you got any problems? Anything not up to scratch, to avoid those kind of disputes where they might go, that stay wasn't what I wanted. So there's definitely a kind of pillar there. You mentioned fraud. So, again, turn on fraud tools is obviously kind of the top tip there. And it's amazing how many people just don't. And I think that will give you this huge option just to kind of watch for anything that's blacklisted, kind of safely pass things through. And then there is a little bit of a gray area. What do you do if it's a loyalty member who's they're sitting in South Korea using a card you've never seen before? It might be that, hey, the Stripe system doesn't spot that, but you might choose to let it through. So we have this nice little kind of gray area of stuff that you can kind of override and rules you can set as well. And then I think there's a big piece around disputes management as well, which is actually, disputes are higher in hospitality. Things like no-shows, for example. Lots of people will dispute that first night if they booked something, forgot to cancel, didn't show up. And, they've tried officially with you to say, my family member was ill, my dog got run over and whatever, but ultimately they'll charge back the card. So then again, that's about evidence collection. Just make sure you're really on top of actually, do you have documentation for every customer? So in the event of a chargeback, this happens. And we've got some great partners in Stripe. We've got our own dispute management tools as well, where it's just like different banks just need slightly different forms filled out. It sounds pedantic, but it's like, if you just use the tool to just send the right dispute information to the right banks, like you've just got more chance of winning that dispute and getting your money back. So yeah, it's a complicated space. One of the things that Stripe do, and I think why we try and be, kind of the best partners we can, is again, lots of documentations on there. So we, if you go onto kind of Stripe docs and really kind of talk, chargebacks, disputes, fraud management, there's lots of just kind of like top 10 listicles of like, this is really how you do it. We try and share best practices as much as we can. Then obviously we try and make sure our products are really kind of best in class at helping manage it. It's definitely not easy, and there is no kind of silver bullet, but I think as an industry we can do better, and I think as an industry we can kind of make it work. It's like super clear communication, stay on top of the proper legal stuff, and then when it happens, be really responsive. And those are probably the basic building blocks of great fraud management.
Well, and also the thing I always kind of talk about in the industry is it's not all in one platform. You don't have to piece these things together with a login here and a login there. So I think that's super important, because when it comes to operations, as you know, we're already running so thin on time and getting stuff done. And the amount of lists that continue to stack up on your to-do list is just insane. So again, having it one platform, super good. James, I want to obviously respect your time and the time of the listeners. I've only scheduled an hour with you. So if you are okay, I actually kind of want to get into some rapid fire questions for the listeners. And let's do it. What's the payment trend in hospitality that excites you the most?
It's definitely AI. So, and I'm going to be really specific because everyone can say AI. There's something going on in agentic commerce right now. So we launched with an SDK to actually enable an agent to make a payment. So we've launched it with Perplexity and kind of more traditional e-commerce, which is like, hey, design my lounge for me. And here's 10 call objects. And then it's like click pay, and then cards are issued behind the scenes, pays with those suppliers, they get shipped to your house. Like that's going to be ridiculous. And that's available in travel right now. Everyone's gone for like itinerary building and things like that. But what about if you actually just like someone, I'm talking to OTAs, and it's often the smaller scrappy ones who are just like, I'm going to launch this. Like we're going to have a kind of no booking engine, like kind of AI led search. I want hotels to own that space. I do not want that just to be owned by the OTAs. We need to be there as the hospitality industry with that. So that's going to be huge.
Love that. And I know we mentioned stable coins. Can you break down stablecoin in a 60-second or less type of description? Because it's still something I'm learning after the all-in episode with the founders of Stripe. And so it's just very interesting stuff. But what is a stable coin, and why should hoteliers or hospitality brands think about incorporating this into a payment kind of method?
Yeah. So ultimately it is just a digital coin. But the thing that makes it different to like your kind of crypto and your Bitcoin is, so like for every dollar of digital coin, there's a dollar of real money put in a bank somewhere. So you can then, so you know it really is worth that dollar. It's not about speculation. It is by its name stable. Because it's digital, you can move it. Like you move it anywhere, but particularly you can move it cross-border. So all of this money you lose on traditional banking, international banking rails, paying out suppliers in other countries, hotels, customers, OTAs. If you pay them by stablecoin, like all of that stays intact. The transaction fees almost drop to zero. What's exciting is that Stripe is going to kind of hide the complexity of what it is to move stable coins behind the scenes. So actually just as a business, you just get all the benefits. You don't really care, right? You just have like money in pot A and you need to move it to money in pot B, either yours or someone else's. So that's the kind of product we're going to create, but we're going to run it on kind of, new high tech rails outside the traditional banking system, which just means it'll be faster, transparent, way lower cost. So we're announcing much more at Sessions, which is our big kind of San Francisco conference, I think in the spring. And I'd love to come back and kind of share more about that world of B2B payments, which is, hotting up by the day.
I was definitely going to say we need to have a part 2 of this episode because there's so much more I want to get into. And I actually kind of want to maybe we create a document and we can get a little nitty gritty and detail oriented around kind of breaking this down, because I think there's so much education that can happen through a medium like this. But my last final question before the famous question I ask every guest, but if you had a magic wand to fix one payment issue in hospitality businesses today, what would that issue be that you could fix overnight with this magic wand?
I would scrap paperwork at the front desk. Simply done. Like everything now can happen in an online world. Like just make it easier for guests. And if you want to have a front desk experience, make it about hospitality, make it about greeting 100%. And welcoming and concierge. Don't make it about paperwork and credit card numbers.
100%. Love it. And for the listeners, where can they learn more? Where can they connect with you? What's the famous place you'd love to send them? And I would love to get this white paper that you talked about earlier to link in the show notes. But would love to know, where should the listeners go to learn more?
Yeah, the beauty of Stripe, I think it's the only payment company in the world that is genuinely self-serve. So just jump on stripe.com and start figuring it out. Create a Stripe account, create a proof of concept, use our documentation. There's everything from kind of low and no code to like much more API led and complex. If you want to dive particularly into where hospitality and payments meet, I'm on LinkedIn, James Lemon, do kind of follow some of that stuff and start the debate. Like it's changing all the time and it's such an exciting space. I'm learning all the time. I'm only a couple of years into payments, whereas I'm, 20 years in hospitality. So, it's a journey we all need to go on together. Like we're all mentees, we're all mentors, we're all students. Let's figure it out as an industry.
I love it. Well, James, thank you so much for the time that you spent with us today. For the listeners, I highly recommend you share, and subscribe this episode as much as possible, because this is going to be a big topic for me this year. I hope to see you in the future, hopefully come to a Sessions or to meet you at the next industry conference together. And James, I just want to say thank you so much for all that you've brought to the table today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Will. It's been great to be here. Thank you.
All right, Slick Talkers, make sure you grab the links in the show notes for all things James Lemon and Stripe, so that way you can connect, get informed, and of course, don't forget to stay hospitable. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.